I've got a new toy. Hello and welcome back to Mark Ellis Reviews, and thank you as always for subscribing, and if you haven't subscribed, the button's just down there. So a little while ago I gave you a behind the scenes tour of this little studio, but one of the biggest things I wanted to change was the desk. But I've gone a bit further than that, as is always the case with me, and then everything changed again. Let me explain. So first of all, the desk. Now originally I had a great big desk from IKEA. I can't remember what it was called. It was just basically two trestles from IKEA and one of their great big wooden surfaces. It's a lovely desk. I highly recommend that IKEA stuff. It was just too big for this room. It was massive. This is quite a small studio. I've got a desk behind me, which is a standing desk, and having the IKEA desk, although it gave me loads of surface space, which is quite handy for B-roll and that sort of stuff, it was just a bit too bulky and a bit too big, and it made the room feel even smaller than it was. Luckily for me, a company called FlexiSpot got in touch and offered to send me a standing desk to review. They did. This isn't a sponsored video, but they sent it to me to try out and give you my honest opinion on, and it's called the E7. The first thing I noticed when I got the FlexiSpot E7, before I unpackaged it, was just how heavy it was. It was a really, really heavy package, and that's quite reassuring actually for a desk, because you want it to be sturdy. So the fact it was properly heavy actually was quite nice. The installation, the setup, really straightforward. You just build it yourself, use an Allen key for most of it, a screwdriver here and there. It didn't take me long, to be honest. It was one of those jobs that I picked a Saturday to do it. I thought, right, clear the decks, let's go for it. Cleared out the old IKEA desk, put that in the garage, and basically went from there and set up the E7. And like I say, it's a really simple install. If you've not installed a desk yourself, if you've not set up a desk before, certainly if you haven't set up a standing desk before, you've got nothing to worry about. It's really, really easy. And the size I've got is just perfect for this room. I'll put the details in the video description, but they do lots of different sizes. I went for the bamboo version, which I think looks quite nice, but they also do it in black, white, maple, I think, and a few others. And the frame, so the legs, if you like, they can be a different colour if you want. I went for the white version, but they also do those in black and I think silver as well. And all in all, it looks like a lovely desk. It looks very premium. It's not cheap, but it looks like a well-built premium desk. And this is a motorized desk, so it comes with a little control panel on the left hand side, although you can fit it on either side actually. You can raise and lower it. The version that I've got has 4 settings, so you can basically choose 4 default settings for yourself at any height that you want. And when it's raised, it's nice and stable. When it's low, it's stable. I've got the desk behind me it's got a crank. It's like a manual standing desk, and it's a bit cheap. I think it was about £40, £50 from Amazon, so it's a cheap version, and as a result of that, it's a little bit unstable. The E7 it's not rock solid. You know, these desks do move a little bit, but it's very, very little, and it's perfectly fine. The motor's pretty quiet. It does this thing where it slows down slightly as it gets to its finishing height, which is quite nice because it means all your stuff doesn't fall off the desk. And why have a standing desk? Well, it's one of those things which is great for health. You're supposed to stand as much as you can during the day while you're working. I mix my time between standing and sitting, and I do find I feel a bit more energetic, particularly when I'm doing calls and things like that. I like to be standing because it just makes me feel a bit more up for it really, and a bit more energetic. But all in all, the E7 is the exact size desk that I wanted. I now feel like I have much more room in here, but it's also very well made. I highly recommend it. It's a brilliant desk. And the best of it is there is a offer on at the moment. You have to be very quick because I'm publishing this video on the 25th of May and I think it finishes on this day, but if it's available, go for it. And basically, if you go to the link in my description, you can get £15 off all orders over £150 or more. They're calling it FlexiSpot Day. It is the 25th, which is today possibly as you're watching this, so be quick. I think they're very good value for money. They're not cheap desks, but in my experience, having bought a very cheap standing desk, you do need to spend a bit of money to get something that is really good. And I'm really pleased with the E7. It's fantastic. I would not hesitate to recommend it. Cable management. Now, if you come to my house, there are very little cables anywhere. I get a bit angsty about cables. I can't stand having things dangling around. So before I set up the new desk in here, the cables in this room were just horrendous. They were horrible. So I knew that when I put a new desk in, I wanted to do something about that cable management. Now, this is a horrible process. If you've ever tried to tidy up your cables behind your desk or anything really, you'll know it's an absolute pain in the backside. It's one of those jobs that I start, wish I hadn't started, end up swearing to myself constantly through it, and eventually get to the end of it, and then you realise that it was worth it. Now, the stuff that I've used to tidy up all my cables, you can get all sorts of different sheaths and things that you can put cables through. I've always found in the past that they're a bit messy. They don't even look that good once you're done. You have to kind of wrap them around the cables and all sorts of things. So I was looking for something that was a bit neater, easier to install, and just as easy to quickly add cables to or move if I needed to. And what I found were these zippable kind of fabric cable sheaths, and they are just like a fabric thing that you tie the cables into or push the cables into and then zip up. Really easy, really convenient. They look nice, they're black, and they're just much better than those kind of plasticky trunking things that you can get. I used quite a bit of gaffer tape as well. If you look underneath this desk, I'll show you some B-roll now, it's pretty horrendous, but you can't see it obviously. It just means that any lingering dangling cables don't keep dangling down. They're kind of stuck to the desk. Now, the other thing I did, because even when you've done all the trunking and everything, you've still normally got a mess of cables on the floor. Now, I found on Amazon this little cable box. It's called like a cable tidy box. I'll put a link in the description. Pretty cheap, doesn't cost you much, and basically it's got a few cutouts in it and a lid. And the idea being that you put all of the cables into that box, put the lid on, feed them out through the holes that they've given you, and that's it. And it's actually quite effective. It's another thing beneath the table, but it's quite small, and it does hide those cables that are all left over. So cable management, mine is not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I still need to do quite a bit of work with it, but it's so much better than it was. One piece of advice, however, is if you've got a standing desk and you're doing cable management, make sure you start with the desk at the top, at the highest setting that you're going to use it at. I didn't do that. I did my cable management with the desk in a sitting position like this, and you can probably guess what happened. As soon as I'd finished and pressed the up button, all the cables kind of came out and it went horrendously wrong. So just start your cable management if you've got a standing desk with the desk at its standing position. Now, the other thing that's worth giving a little insight into in this little studio update is my podcasting gear, because I have launched a podcast with my co-host Rob. It's called 8 or 16, and you can find it on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Spotify. We've put it on everything, TuneIn Radio. It's just there. Go and have a look for it. But obviously to do that, I had to get all my podcasting gear set up. And just running through it really quickly, so I use a Zoom L12 mixing desk, which is over here. Now, it's a mixing desk / audio interface, so it actually acts as both, which is fantastic, because normally you'd have perhaps a separate mixing desk, an audio interface, the mic and all that kind of stuff. The L12 has everything built in, and it's one, a really good audio interface, but two, it's got 12 channels. So in theory, if you're doing a big podcast with 3, 4, 5, 6 people, you can record all those mics in as separate channels. Great stuff. It's only me and Rob for my podcast, but that's fine, because you can also feed in the Zoom call into the mixing desk and record it all natively onto an SD card. It's the best podcasting thing I've ever bought in terms of gear, in terms of making the whole process super simple. It's fantastic. In terms of the mic, I use a Samsung Q2U. These are very cheap actually for podcasting mics. They're £70, £80, I think. They're both USB and XLR, so you can use them in either configuration basically. And they're well regarded. The reason I bought it was because one, it was pretty low cost. I needed to buy quite a few of them at the time. And the sound quality is fantastic. I will be upgrading it at some point, but it's one of those things where I think it sounds great actually. Have a listen to the podcast, let me know what you think. I've attached my Samsung to a cheap mic arm, but that sits to the right of my desk. It's always attached, so whenever I do the podcast with Rob, I simply pull out the mic, put it in front of me, hit record on the L12, and we're away. Now, something else which is notable for this desk switch around is a brand new USB hub that I'm using for the Mac Mini. Now, I've already done a comparison between two Mac Mini hubs. I'll put a link at the top. And that comparison was looking at two different Mac Mini hubs that you place your Mac Mini on top of. However, I wanted to try something different, and a company called Plugable very kindly sent me their TBT3. Now, the TBT3 isn't just built for the Mac Mini. It will work on pretty much any laptop you have that has a USB-C connection. It's a bit of a beast. It's a 14-in-1 connection USB hub. It's $249. It has fast laptop charging at 96 watts, and it's got 2 HDMI ports or display ports, one 10 gigabits per second USB-C, one USB-A, which is 10 gigabits per second, 5 USB 3 connections that are 5 gigabytes per second. It's got gigabit Ethernet, audio in, out, SD card, micro SD card, and all of that passes through a single Thunderbolt 3 cable, which is rated at 40 gigabytes per second. And it's really good. The reason I'm mentioning this is because it might be an alternative if you don't like those Mac Mini hubs that I mentioned before, and you want something that's just a bit beefier. The fact that it drives more than one display, I don't use that, but that could be very, very useful for certain people. A few of the bits and pieces that I bought for this studio update, one of them is a Satechi desk mat. The reason I got that, two reasons really. One of them is because it acts as a kind of mouse mat type thing. It makes the desk look nicer as well, and it does also protect the desk. I don't want to get this E7 desk scratched and what have you, so that's part of the reason. The other reason is it looks quite nice for B-roll, so you'll occasionally see me now filming things with this kind of dark blue top. I've also got a newer mini camera stand, which this camera that you're watching through at the moment is sat on. I love newer stuff. It's the kind of cheaper brand for video gear, and the lighting I'm using in here is newer. Lots of different things. All the stands and things I use, generally speaking, are newer. I was looking for something that I could put on the desk that wasn't too big, that could extend if I needed it to as well, and that I could perhaps carry around if I needed to do little filming here and there. And it's brilliant. Again, I'll put a link in the description. Very highly recommended. I bought another headphone stand because you can't have too many headphone stands. And then I bought some HomeKit lights for under the desk. I had these on the IKEA desk, but obviously in taking the IKEA desk out, the lights went with it. And the advice I'd give whenever you're installing under desk lights, I rushed mine on the IKEA desk, whereas with the E7 I took my time and I did it very carefully. I also recommend, if you can, get the version with HomeKit or whatever smart device you use, because it just means you can control them with your voice, which is very handy. I didn't go with the Philips Hue, they're very expensive. I wanted to just get something fairly cheap. In my experience, these ones work pretty well. That was it, or at least I thought that was it, and then everything changed again. Now, I hadn't planned this at all, and I was actually waiting for my 24-inch M1 iMac to arrive at the start of June, because for some reason deliveries to this house from Apple seem to take forever. But to cut a long story short, I managed to get myself a 24-inch iMac ahead of time, and that meant that, again, the whole setup in here changed. What I've done is I've switched to the 24-inch iMac wholesale for a little while. So this is going to be my main computer in terms of daily stuff that I do. Video editing, audio editing will take place still on the M1 Mac Mini, so I've got a kind of video editing station behind me, which is quite cool. But yeah, I've now got the M1 iMac here. That again enabled me to just tidy this desk up a bit. So this E7 desk, which is smaller than the desk that I had before, I've got to be very careful with in terms of how much of it I use up. I don't like clutter, I like to keep things simple. And the great thing about the 24-inch iMac is that it's not very big. So I've completely pared down the desk. It's got the iMac on it, it's got my iFi Zendak hub that I mentioned a moment ago, it's got my Kanto speakers, and it's got a headphone stand, of course, and that's pretty much it, apart from the little peripherals and things. So it works really nicely. Now, I'm not going to go any further about the iMac at the moment because I am in the process of reviewing it. So if you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button, click the bell, and you'll be notified when I do the review of this iMac. So lots changing in here. If you're interested in how I get the mic sound, which a lot of people are, I have done a video on that, which I will link to at the end of this video, so keep watching for a link to that. But in the meantime, thank you as always for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.